Welcome back to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guest is Vinnie Baiocchetti, or Vinnie the Barber, as some people know him. Vinnie has 30 years of experience in law enforcement, 44 years in the fire service, 44 years of martial arts experience with 25 years instructing, 10 years of military service, and 7 years as a barber. Quite the resume, Vinnie.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So, what have you been up to lately?
Well, cutting hair, playing, having a good time.
A lot of hair, little hair. This whole COVID situation is kind of interesting with its restrictions.
It is, but people still want haircuts, so.
I think they want haircuts more than ever.
They do. Yep.
So where are you cutting hair right now?
I still travel. I have a lot of clients that are older. I do a lot of house calls. I'm probably one of the few traveling barbers that in the state that actually does exclusive traveling. So,
and for those listeners who don't know, in New Hampshire, you can't technically have a traveling barber shop, but when you're offering services in nursing homes and other jails, situations like that, you can travel.
Yep. Yeah, my guys are older, so they can't get out of the house. They have Alzheimer's. They have physical disabilities. Prevents them from getting out of the house. So that's what I get to do.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So have you had any trouble getting into places with a lot of nursing home restrictions right now that are still dealing with spreads?
Yeah, two of my contracts, one of the nursing homes and one of the correctional facilities, I haven't been there since January. So, don't know. They have no return date either. So, yeah.
Have you stayed in contact with them or just not heard?
I just haven't heard. They know, I mean, they have people that are there, so they know that they need barbers, but no, they're not.
Just figure when they're ready, they'll give you a call.
Yeah, and that's what they said. They'll let us know, so.
All right. Why don't we start with the beginning? Not like all the way back, 50 plus years ago, but we can if you really want to, but that'll make kind of a long conversation.
It would.
So you retired from the law enforcement.
I did, yeah, in 2013.
And what made you decide that as a good retirement gig, barbering was for you?
I never really gave a thought to barbering. I used to cut my hair because it was always high and tight, and it was easy, and shaved the back of my head and did a little ranger patch and all that stuff. And I was thinking about being a cobbler because my grandfather came over from Italy and was a cobbler, but cobblers are kind of dying out, unfortunately. There are few around, which is good, but everything's so disposable in society now. So I think I saw an article on New England School of Barbering and said, how about that? The rest is, I started planning my future, and I think it took me 2 years to figure that out. And then I retired. I started school the next week.
Nice. I think I kind of agree. For a long time, we were very much a disposable society. But I think it's kind of shifting a little bit now where, we're more conscious about the planet.
Sure.
But also I think there's a upcoming generation that has control of the wallet that really doesn't want the cheap things that fall apart that you just throw away in a year or two. We're really looking for quality, and I think that's affected not just cobblers and a lot of other manufacturers, but also the barbering profession. Everybody's looking for quality.
Sure. I matter of fact, I just had a conversation the other day. I bought a pair of jump boots for my graduation in 1979 when I got out of basic, and I resold them from Bob LaBelle in Laconia before it became Dobbs.
Yep.
And I think I had those resold 3 times because they were broken in, they were great, and then finally they just died. The leather on the side started to wear out. They couldn't be patched anymore. And
yeah, once you break in a good solid leather shoe, you really don't want to have to start over.
Absolutely. It's like anything else that's, you're comfortable in and you like, and you don't want to, yeah.
Well, and I remember when I went through basic, I was one of the last classes to get the leather boots and not the suede.
Okay.
So, the first, 2 weeks, it was half the day in boots and half the day in sneakers with your regular BDU uniform, which looked ridiculous. But it's the majority of people going through, today's generations have never had to wear solid leather boots.
Right.
So you really have to condition their feet to it as well as help break it in.
Sure. But once you do, it's like anything else.
Like a glove.
Like a glove. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got, I think, 3 or 4 pairs of leather shoes and boots that I don't wish for the day for them to die anytime soon, because
It becomes a sad day.
between breaking it in with your foot and getting the needed layers of polish on to really make them pop and shine, I mean, there's not a lot that's better than that on a shoe.
Nothing at all.
And I think with the same way when it comes to the barber experience, where for so long there was either unisex salons because barbers weren't willing to cut long hair,
Right.
or even more so the corporate chains. You had the Supercuts, the Great Clips, the Sport Clips, however many clips and cutters that you end up seeing that would just like knock them out in 10 minutes. It's all about quantity, not about quality.
Right.
So I think that that's part of the reason why in New Hampshire in the last 10 years, we've really had a major resurgence in barbering, where 10 years ago it was 600 barbers licensed in the state versus 12,000 hairdressers.
I think I think the number when I graduated, that there were like 1,200 barbers and 12,000 cosmetologists. And
Yep, and now I think it's pushing 4,000.
is it really good? That's great. That's great. There's enough work for everybody.
Oh, definitely. As long as you got 400 heads per single barber, you're good.
Yeah. And you're, and you actually have customer service, then you should last.
Well, and having a genuine connection with your customers, I think, that's how you keep people.
That's the customer service part.
But I feel like there's a weird business model in the corporate area, and this is not to like crap on corporate, but it's just the reality of their business model, where they even discourage their individual stylists or barbers from having a clientele, because their business model is based on walk into any of our establishments anywhere, sit in any of the chairs, and you'll get the same quality haircut.
Really?
That's not necessarily guaranteeing how high quality it is, but it's that like C average across the board.
Mm-hmm.
That's the business model. So that is in essence discouraging your stylists or barbers from gaining that following, because not only are people going to you for you, but they're also going to you for your signature version of what you put on their head.
Sure.
So I feel like that's kind of helping the barber profession right now, in New Hampshire at least.
Right. Well,
Because, I mean, we can only talk about New England. We haven't been a whole lot of other places when it comes to our profession.
yeah. I mean, my customer services, I worry about my haircuts, make sure that they're good. And I really hope that not only the person likes it, especially if they're married, that their wife likes it or their kids like it.
Anybody who has to look at them.
Anybody that's important to them that has to look at it. Absolutely. It's, when I was cutting I cut in a spa for 3 years. And it was more high-end stuff. And you worry about that, because not only will people come back, but these are businessmen, politicians, people that were performers, rock stars, those
Public
kinds of things,
figures.
athletes. You'd rather have them go, hey, look at the haircut, as opposed to, oh, look at the haircut. I don't want to be the second. I want to be the first.
Well, and I feel if anybody's like lacking confidence in their skill set, if you pay close attention to so many people, public figures that you see on TV, and if you actually see their haircuts,
Yes.
and some of them aren't great.
No, that's true. It's true.
Now, that may be what they like, but it also might be that they don't know any better. But at very least, it's strive for better. So you see the standard, you see what people expect,
Right.
and try and hit above that.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you always try to be perfect. You can never be perfect, but there's no harm in trying to strive for it. So.
Yeah, I think my levels of measurement, first level is, do I make the customer happy?
Right.
Second one is, am I happy with it? Is it, if I see you in public, am I going to go, there's a line there? Or am I going to go, that's a nice haircut. Did I do that haircut? It looks familiar. And the person turns around and you go, yeah, I did that haircut.
See, mine's the other way around. You know, my happy first. It's funny because I had a client who was sitting in my chair one day and he said something and I made a comment. It was one of my usual smart comments. And he goes, look, it's your hair. You just let me wear it. So I've kind of stuck with that. And, you know, if I'm not happy with it, it's not leaving the chair. So.
Well, and that's why I always say that's level 2 for me is because, like, all right, making them happy, that's not a very high bar.
Right.
Like, I can make you happy, no problem. But I also need to be happy with it because I have a much higher bar for myself.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And then, of course, especially if somebody comes in and their significant other that they have has to look at them isn't present.
Right.
And they're like, first time in my chair, and they go, all right, I'll let you know if the wife approves. And, you know, I'll come back. And if she has a tweak or suggestion, then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And I go, no problem. The only thing I want to do is make sure that I don't make them angry because I don't want a call from a wife going, I can't believe what you did to my husband's hair.
Right. That's right.
I don't do well with conflict.
No. I have no problem with conflict. I have a conflict with, or a problem with conflict with other people that aren't involved. You know.
Oh, the peanut galleries?
Mothers, wives, yes, when they call and say, you know, what did you do? I did what he asked me to do. Don't do that. Okay.
Next time, pin the instructions to his shirt.
I've had that happen. My wife said, this is what I need. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, if you're that person that cares nothing about your hair and your significant other wants to see you in a certain way because that's how
Right.
they find you attractive, then power to you.
That's it. It's funny how different barbering is. It's not just coming in and getting your hair cut. You know, there's so many other things that if you're a good barber, beside having skills, there are a lot of other things that you need to think about, you need to work with.
Oh, you're the middleman, you're the therapist, you're
Absolutely.
advice giver, like financial advice, legal advice, medical advice. Like, you just have to be an all-around, like, hey, this is my suggestion as a reasonable person.
Right.
Sometimes you're just a sounding board.
Lots of times, absolutely. You know, it's kind of like being the bartender, you know.
I think it's a little bit easier than being the bartender, personally.
Yeah, they're not drunk
Yeah, pretty much.
of the time. Most of the time.
Unless you have that kind of a shop.
Well, where I was, I had a guy who would bring in a handle of Jim Beam, and every week he came in, and I would have a glass of his stuff for him, and he would sit and get his face shaved because he would sit up when he would do that, and because he couldn't see anything, he had to look around and got his hair cut and drank his bourbon, and
That was his day at the spa.
that was his day at the barbershop. Yep.
And for anybody who doesn't know, in the state of New Hampshire, for salons and barbershops, you can offer complimentary alcoholic beverages
Yes.
without a liquor license.
Yeah. Especially when it's his.
Right. Yeah, especially when your customer brings it in and is like, hey, I'm going to drink this. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, stay in my
Sure.
locker. That's it. Stay in my locker, and nobody else drank from it.
And that's all you can ask.
That's it. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, everybody seems to have, their own level, their own measurement for, what is relaxing for them.
Right.
And, it's important for our barbers to be flexible and versatile in offering what that person wants.
Yeah.
And being aware of that, being able to read that and have that communication with a customer.
Yeah. It's really important too. I mean, I ask 3 questions, and if I get yes, no answers to them, they don't want to talk. If they expand on those questions, then we'll talk, and it's up to them. Sometimes especially shaving, and I like shaving more than I like cutting hair. Guys just go to sleep for 40 minutes. I think that's how they get the extended shave. They just fall asleep and start snoring on my chair.
Hey, why not? You get nap time.
That's it, and that's quite the compliment when you can put somebody to sleep on your.
Got a blade on their
when
face?
you got a blade on your face, yeah.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. And shaving is as well one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
I always tell people I'd give up cutting hair if I could shave faces all day.
Oh, in a second, absolutely.
So let's get back to your journey as a barber. So you
Yes.
are a graduate of New England School of Barbering,
I'm a proud graduate of New England School of Barbering, absolutely.
and I had the pleasure of meeting you when I was going through my instructor's program.
Yes,
So I had to actually try and help teach you.
well, that was, we all have our cross to bear. I had mine, you had yours.
And somehow we managed to find middle ground.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about your experience and struggles in barber school, and what you found easy or hard, or what personal things that you struggled with, whether it was your eyesight or a particular haircut.
Well, actually, you mentioned that, and I think I'm not sure you were there that day, but I did find out that I needed a little bit stronger glasses because I was doing a flat top, and the guy had salt and pepper hair, and I had a black comb, and I just, excuse me, I couldn't see the hair. And Dave Caron, Mr. C, was standing over me, just kind of chewing on me that, cut that hair, and I couldn't see it. So I ended up having to go to the eye doctor and get glasses. So that was my biggest struggle that way. Academically, it was pretty easy. You study, it's not that difficult. You pay attention, you participate, it's not that hard.
Did you find it frustrating at all going from an instructor and leadership position to kind of like switching in your brain to being a student?
No, not really. No, it was, being told, to do this, you're not right, you're incorrect. At first, it was kind of like, well, I don't know, it looks good to me, but what do I know? Because this is only like my third day. But after a while, you can see from both Mr. C and Mrs. C that they get on you because you're going to be all by yourself when you leave the school. And I've had several trainings like that where, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely, they're task-oriented things, but in order for you to be able to figure things out so that you can fix your problem by yourself, it needs to be taught that way. If they just said, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it," or we're not on you, I don't think people would succeed as well as they do when they come out of that school. They may not realize it at the time, but having either participated in by being a student or an instructor in that kind of training, it was relatively easy to see that that's the reason why they were hard.
And I think that having a mature perspective on that really helps, especially if you've had a lot of experience in trainings.
Sure.
Where you kind of understand that if you're coddled, you're not going to learn. Like that type of information, if it's presented in a way that's too comfortable, or you're only given a very controlled situation to try and establish that knowledge,
Right.
that it's not going to stick in your brain. It's going to kind of like chill there with static and then fall away.
I agree with you to a point. I mean, you'll learn it, but the problem becomes the critical thinking skills that we as barbers actually need, so that if you screw something up, there are the procedures, and I use when I see Mrs. C all the time about the 14 steps of shaving. They went out. I think my license was still warm when those procedures went out for me. But if you pay attention and you take what they teach you to heart, as opposed to them, always ragging on me and yelling at me and telling me I'm wrong, you have those skills and the ability to think past those problems, not get flustered, and fix your issue. Whether it's changing the haircut, excuse me, and apologizing, saying it's going to be a little shorter this week, or being able to, fix it with some other method, but as opposed to having a meltdown.
Right, and we need that because it's inevitable that we will make a mistake.
Absolutely.
Even as a barber that's been 7-8 years or decades,
Right.
like, you will have an off day, off moment, a twitch, an oops, a wow, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And you're going to need to, number one, be able to keep your cool in that situation and not like have to walk out and take a cigarette break, or like have a meltdown and leave your customer alone in the chair like, what's going on, guy?
Right.
Where'd you go? Are you done? But also having those critical thinking skills in that high pressure situation, which for those of us who are military vets isn't that high pressure, but
Correct.
it's high pressure when dealing with a social situation.
Right. And I think my background is really good. When I got out, my school finished, I didn't have anything to do really for a while because time was coming up and I had some plans. And so I had like a month off that I didn't have anything to do. So I went back to the school and I was just helping Mrs. C cut because she was short barbers. And this guy comes in and he goes, I just want a number 2 all the way around. Well, the 2, we don't use guards. So the number 2 is not a guard. It's a 1/4 inch. And it's a blade. It's metal. I've never used a guard, so I don't know how to use them. But he knows it because he's been going to the school the whole time. And I had one of those moments, and Mrs. C it was just her and I in the shop, and we were talking, and I ripped into that, and the sound was different. And I realized that there's a difference between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch, because he didn't want it tapered. And she looked at me, I looked at her, and I just finished up with my number 1 in that area, and then went to the 2, and it was fine. But that's the critical thinking, is that I knew as soon as I heard that sound, something was wrong, and so did she. But he never knew it, and that's part of the hard, I don't want to say hard. It wasn't hard, but it was the demanding task of teaching properly.
Well, and being able to execute that trade that you went to school to learn.
Sure, yeah,
in the professional setting.
right,
Going, when you have no safety net,
right,
nobody to talk to, especially if you were running a one-chair shop,
yeah,
or you're working at an establishment where nobody's going to be around to help you,
right.
that you have to make it happen.
That's it. And she was cutting. She never came over and said, "What did you do?" Oh, she just looked at me. I looked at her and went, gave her the kind of the eye roll off to the side. The guy never knew. She never said anything until after. She goes, "Little different, huh?" I go, "Oh yeah," and that was it. We fixed it, and it was fine. So, but again, I think that's a lot from my background too.
Oh, definitely. I'd say you have a lifetime of dealing with high pressure situations.
Exactly. Cutting a hair is not for me, is not high stress, high pressure.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's also because, I was coming straight out of the military, going to barber school,
Right.
and going, I don't have to carry 2 weapons right now.
Right.
I don't have to worry about my safety. The worst possible scenario in this situation is me messing up somebody's hair or cutting them.
Right.
I go, and though I will feel guilty about it and I will feel bad, it is not life or death.
Right. Exactly.
So, what would be your advice for any students that are planning on going through a program that was the same or similar to yours?
You don't know everything, even though you've been cutting hair for, and there's a difference, and I'll preach for this for a bit. People say, well, barbers shouldn't have licenses, they shouldn't cut. It is not about, being a barber is not about cutting hair. It is, but learning to be a barber and being licensed to be a barber is so much more. The courses that we take, the anatomy and physiology, the hair texture, the skin issues, those kinds of things. As a barber, you look for those things. If you're just cutting hair, you don't look for that stuff. You don't know any better. So, you wanna actually study. You wanna be a good barber. You wanna be the best barber you can be. And if you get you get out of it what you put into it. And if you just go to class and cut hair and don't pay any attention to anything and don't care about anybody or anything, you're going to be that kind of barber.
Well, and the entire point of our license is we're tasked with the safety and welfare of the public.
Absolutely.
That is the only reason we have that license.
Correct.
It has no sort of measurement for how well we cut hair.
No.
Only that we can do it safely and clean.
Yeah. I've seen unlicensed people give phenomenal haircuts, and I've seen licensed barbers give haircuts that I've fixed. But there is, like you said, so much more to that, and the health and safety and welfare of our clients is so much more important. The spread of disease, and hair is not clean stuff, and you got to pay attention to that.
Well, hair can be clean stuff.
Hair can be clean stuff. You're right. You're right. But
And I think that's actually one of the things that really has people hesitate in entering the profession is there's a societal perception that hair is automatically dirty when it comes to, grooming expectations in general in our Western society.
Right.
It's that, less hair is better unless it's on your head. And then it's like, it depends on who you are.
Right.
So there's a weird perception that hair means dirt. But hair is just hair.
Right. And it's dead.
And it performs a function.
Yep.
Like, it's part of our biology for a reason. Like, it's not like it's like, why do I have nose hairs? They're just in the way and they look gross. It's they actually act as a filter,
Correct.
keeping out a lot of things that could otherwise go into you.
Right.
But, having that understanding of your own biology
Right.
When entering a profession like this, I think is really important. And if you lack that, you won't by the time you're out.
Correct. I cut hair at a correctional facility, and some of the and I cut male and female hair. Some of my clients, and they're not inmates when they're there with me. They're clients. They have skin issues. They have hair issues. They have that kind of stuff, and you educate them, and it's still, if you try this, this will work. If you stop doing this, this should work. A lot of them are addicted to drugs. Have other health issues. And the place that they're in is usually really dry, so they have dry skin, and so you try to explain or give them helpful hints that they may be able to overcome that, or at least when they get out, they'll be able to overcome that. So
I think that's one of the responsibilities of a licensed barber is that there's an expectation of service when we can fly a barber pole and have that license where you're the professional.
yes,
If they have a question about hair or skin, pretty much anything from the neck up, we have a responsibility to be educated on those subjects. Because, just as an example, when I went to Denver for 5 weeks to get a household and estate management certification, I legitimately land, and I have like an hour to kill before I have to show up to the location. So I'm like chilling around the Capitol. I'm like, I need to get breakfast. And there's a lot of homeless in Denver.
Yeah.
Like it's everywhere. So this one guy, as I'm crossing over to get to a diner, and I have like 2 big old suitcases. I'm in a suit. Like, I look like a flight attendant. This homeless man comes and asks me if he can help me, or if he wanted something. I can't remember how the conversation went, but I basically offered to buy him breakfast. I was like, you help me with my bags, because though they roll, sidewalks there aren't exactly even. So I'm like, help me with my bags, and I'll be happy to buy you breakfast. Have breakfast with me, because I'm new in town. It's fine. And while we were having breakfast together, we were having a conversation, and he has, like a matted dreadlock in the back.
Yeah.
That was not purposeful. So he asked, he's like, I've got this situation going on, like, can you give me advice? Because I told him I was a barber. Give me advice on, what I can do to take care of that. So, of course, I'm more than happy to give my
Sure.
advice, take a look at it, tell him what I think he should do. And that's in a totally different situation than what I was going to Denver for, but somebody wants to know something and I can give them an answer. That's my responsibility as a person.
Sure.
But that's also me personally going, I want to collect all the knowledge that I can possibly fill in my brain
Right.
for the purpose of sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if I can help in no other way, I can help with what I know.
Yeah. And that's the important thing, too, about being a barber is that we help each other. It's not just I get this knowledge and then I keep it to myself, because that never does any good. So, you help younger barbers. How many times have I asked you questions or other people questions? And they're more than happy to give me information. And now that I've got that knowledge, I do the same thing. And new barbers come up and they ask me, or I teach them a technique that I use.
Well, and we're tickled pink when we get people that are in any sort of haircutting program come into the shop, introduce themselves.
Sure.
Say, hey, can I hang out and watch you guys cut for a little while? Sure, no problem. We'll talk to you, tell us why we're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Tell you what not to do in school if we know what program you're in. Like, we're always happy to see somebody that's driven
Right.
enough to seek more than what is presented to them.
Yeah.
And my personal perspective on knowledge is that it is the only thing that you can acquire and nobody can steal from you,
Right.
but you can give it
Right.
and never lose it.
Exactly. And I think that the more you give, the more you get out of it. You become not only a better person, but you become a better barber.
Oh, definitely, because you're thinking on like, all right, well, why do I do this?
Right.
So you adjust your perspective and go, well, is this necessary?
Yeah.
Is this wasting time? Is this something that I really should be um, encouraging in someone?
Right. Kind of like the 14 steps.
It's a really good foundation, Vinny.
It is and I joke about it, but it really is a good foundation, and it's just my joke. It's an inside joke, and yeah, freehand all the way.
Well, when you're doing dermaplanes, I mean, I could understand where you're going freehand all the way.
That is true. So it's one is wet, one is dry. It's still freehand. Oh God,
So,
I'd be getting smacked if Mrs. C was here. So I'd be getting smacked if Mrs. C was here.
no, she's mellowed since then. She wouldn't smack you. She'd give you a look.
Yes, she would. She does regularly.
For anybody who doesn't know who we're referring to, Cynthia Karen is Dave Karen's wife, and she is the main instructor at New England School of Barbering currently. And she is a spitfire of an individual.
Absolutely. That's a good term.
Will put you in your place if necessary. But in the 8 years that I have known her, she has gone from a very spirited individual to a very mature and well-rounded instructor.
She is a very good instructor. They both are. They're both very good in their own ways. They have different techniques.
And that's great for diversifying
Absolutely it is.
the engagement and the presentation of information.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things that I was happy to offer when instructing at the school was because I already know how they pitch the information, because that's how they pitched it to me. I know, all right, well, they've already heard that, and if that hasn't helped it click with them, they need it a different way. So how can I present it in a better fashion for them that they might understand a little bit better? And that's one of the struggles of instructing.
It is. It's how to find your students' best way to learn.
Adult learners are a special breed.
Yes, especially when they know everything.
Well, I mean, I think that even if they know the information, if they're in that situation long enough, they'll come out with something that they didn't know before.
Absolutely.
Even if it's humility.
Yes.
I can remember back when my Master Barber program, the regular school was Monday through Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday were just clinic on the floor cutting hair.
Yeah.
And Monday through Thursday, it was Mr. C. And, you start off Monday, you're like, oh, I had the weekend, I didn't cut any hair, I'm getting a little rusty. And then throughout the week, you'd get more and more confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then by Thursday, you're like, yeah, I'm rocking it. I'm doing great. And then Friday morning, come in. Friday and Saturday were Mrs. C days. Alone.
Right.
And first haircut in your chair and ripped to shreds.
Right.
You felt like the size of a Lego person.
Yeah.
But that was really, really good for me because by Thursday, my head is like the size of a room. And Friday, it needs to be deflated so I can be humble again so that I can accept more information.
Right.
Coming, that day and the next, and then the next week. Because you are not in a frame of mind to learn and accept information if you think that you're good.
At that stage, you're absolutely right. You've maybe done 40 haircuts, and then as the school goes on, you get better. You can see your own progression, which is really surprising because usually you don't see your own progression, but your progression is marked by, and people take this to heart. She'll go over or he'll go over and tell you did this and this wrong, and they fall apart on that. Well, that's two parts of the haircut. the rest of the stuff they didn't mention, which means I did all right for the other part. I just got to fix this stuff. So if you go with it with that frame,
Well, I think that we've all gotten better as instructors when it comes to highlighting the good.
sure,
I'll go over to a student's haircut and, I'll inspect it. And of course, I'm seeing all the things that need to be fixed. But I'll also make note of, like, you did a really nice taper here. So that's like the first thing that I will start with when correcting a haircut, because when they call me over for a check, they're already like, ugh, they're going to tell me what I did wrong.
right,
I'm already looking at what I did wrong, but they're going to say, yeah, you're right, you did it wrong. And they're so concerned with being, like, beaten down right away.
right,
So, bringing them back up and reassuring them a little bit. It's like, look, you did really well in this area. Like, I acknowledge that. That's really, really good. You have progress. There's hope for you. You don't have to quit. And then we can, have a better mindset of how are we going to improve your skills in this area that you need to work on, this area that you're struggling.
sure.
And that comes with time and experience when it comes to instructing students.
Yeah, it does. You're absolutely right.
And kind of feeling out each person's personality, how they react to certain types of instruction.
Yeah. And also with the student, I mean, if you're making the same mistake over and over and over and over again, we need to work on that issue.
Right. And it's like, all right, so we need to figure out the core. You're not understanding this basic concept. How can we present it in a way where you'll get it?
Right. Right.
And that offers challenges to the instructor. It's like,
It does.
all right, this thing that I've been doing with people for the last 4 years is not working for this person. All right, I have to be creative. How am I gonna
How do I fix
gonna
this?
present this differently?
Correct.
And that's good because it keeps us from getting bored.
Yeah,
That's my goal in life, is to not be bored.
absolutely. It's no fun when you're bored. I get in trouble when I get bored.
Idle hands sort of thing.
I don't know. I get yelled at by my wife.
Probably because you're bugging her.
I am. That's usually what it is. She's a very patient woman.
She has to be. She's
She-
your wife.
She has to be.
So, what are you planning on doing moving forward? I know everything's very up in the air right now with the COVID restrictions and things being lifted slowly.
It hasn't, it hasn't affected me like it's affected other barbershops. Again, because I travel.
Right, you have a unique situation.
I do. And my clients are, some are terminally ill. They're old. They have dementia. They have, I cut hair in beds. I cut hair in living rooms. I cut hair in, I've cut hair in just about everything but the bathtub, I think. So for me, it really doesn't change that much. My clientele is already established in that aspect, and usually the only time they leave me is when they die. So
It's more of an as-needed basis, so it's not so regimented as our
yeah, well,
our normal
I
stuff.
see them. I see guys once a week. Every other week, every 6 weeks, whenever. Sometimes even if they're not feeling well, they want that haircut. Makes them feel good, or that shave. Makes them feel good.
Well, I think it's a normalizing thing too, where it's like even when the rest of your life is chaos,
Right.
you can take a break and feel good with something you can control.
And I was going to say that it's one of the few things that they can control, and even my dementia and Alzheimer patients, they sometimes don't remember me, but they sit and they get their hair cut, and I always ask them, how's it look? Oh, it's great. It's the best haircut I've ever had. Like, oh, that's good. That's what he told me last time, and the time before, and the year before,
And the compliment is
and
genuine
it is
every time.
Absolutely. And it's nice to be able to do that. Some will talk, and you hear the same stories, or you hear you start to number the stories, but they're some very amazing people, or some people that have done some very amazing things as well. And to hear the stories are really pretty cool. And they're just telling you the story because it's the first time that they think that they've sat in your chair, or that you've cut their hair, and they relax, and they tell you jokes, and they tell you the jokes, and they do all that stuff that guys used to do back in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, and
It's like a time machine.
it is, and it's really gratifying. Yeah, it's really gratifying.
All right, so I'm wondering how things are going to go with this whole COVID thing. Like, do you have any predictions moving forward, at least the way that New Hampshire's been doing things? Because, I mean, we've got some restrictions that are, I would say, a little arbitrary.
I call them silly.
But, all right, so as of right now, this recording, we are officially now allowed to do beard trims again and shaves and basically all the services that we can provide within the certain time allotment that we're allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to wear a mask for your haircut and any other service that isn't covered by a mask. You can only remove the mask if you're getting a service that is otherwise covered by it, as well as some other interesting ones.
Which makes absolutely no sense, but that's okay.
Do you think by like August, September, we're going to just be totally maskless?
People have been very patient with especially at the very beginning of this. But then we listen to the experts, and I'll put air quotes around the experts because they're the ones with the degrees, that tell us different things. And all of a sudden, like you said, the arbitrary rules come out, and people are going to become less and less tolerant. And I think that's where we are now, or people are becoming less and less tolerant. And they just don't, they don't see the need. The stories keep changing.
Well, and I've seen a lot of a major uptick in social media and the tone changes, the attitude changes in people, where I feel like as humans, we generally, as social animals, have a certain time frame of tolerance to be nice.
Yes.
And to be courteous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's firmly why a lot of professions have that 90-day probationary period, is because that's when you find out whether this person will actually last here or if they're going to start clashing with other people.
Right.
Whether it's, the requirements that they have to follow as your employee or the personality differences with the coworkers or whatever. We generally have like 90 days of tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And we have passed that 90 days.
We have.
So I feel like that's why at the beginning we were so tolerant, because nobody knew a lot. There's a lot of things that are up in the air, giant question mark, rather be safe than sorry.
Sure.
Care about your neighbor because we're all in this together, and all those, wonderful adages that people have been spreading around to offer a sense of community, help each other through. But now we've crossed that line of getting into more than 90 days, and people are starting to show their true colors.
Sure.
And be very short with people and intolerant of, not having their preferred items at retail establishments.
Right.
And blaming employees or being short with, people in traffic, or just any interaction where we've had to deal with so many things for so long that we're just tired.
Right. We don't have control.
No. Control is something that we don't have.
Right. And it's if somebody wants to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I would never make fun of anybody for doing either one. It's their personal comfort thing. But
Well, and I think by virtue of anybody who willingly lives in New Hampshire, we have our motto of live free or die. We're very individualistic people, where we believe in our ability to run our own life.
correct.
And for us to not have a say in somebody else's life. You are welcome to do you, and I am welcome to do me.
Right.
And we don't have to bug each other. So I think the longer this goes on, the more there's going to be pushback with people who have that mindset of, it is not your job to tell me what to do and how to do it at all times. If you have a store policy, that's fine. A free market society. I have a cell phone policy in my barbershop.
Sure.
If you want to talk on your cell phone, you can take your butt outside as long as you have working legs. If you don't, I understand. I just hope that that's a priority phone call.
Right.
I'm fully ADA compliant. You're able to exit and enter as you please.
Yeah.
But it's, for our establishment, that is a rule.
Right.
But I certainly don't think that I have any ability to enforce that at, a coffee shop or anything. That's not my house, not my rules.
Right.
But to have government compel all businesses in a certain industry to add certain things without good cause, I think that's over the line.
I don't disagree. And again, you're right. If people want to go into the store, they'll go into the store. If they don't want to go into the store, they don't feel safe, they don't feel whatever they don't feel, then they won't go into the store. And that's free market. That's right.
Yep. Well, and right now, we still have that requirement for masks, and we've had customers cancel their appointment because they don't want to wear a mask.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that means they can't get their hair cut in any establishment in the state right now.
Right.
As long as they're following the orders that they're supposed to be following. But ultimately, there's only so many ways to enforce things.
Correct.
But it's unfortunate that it's like, look, you don't be mad at us because we didn't make the rule. We're
Right.
just trying to keep our license.
Well, and that's the thing is it's not your choice. You're being dictated that, and your license is on the line.
Right. So I'll be happy when logic rules the majority of the time once again.
Yeah. So to make a prediction, I couldn't make a prediction. It changes with the wind. So
Or who's yelling the loudest.
correct.
Well, I certainly hope that by September we'll be a little bit more normal.
Yeah, it would be nice.
But we still continue to roll with the punches, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm fortunate that I don't have to live under some of the rules that the barber shops do. I guess it's an advantage that I have.
Well, and you're more subject to the location of which you're cutting hair.
Correct. Yep.
Well, it was really nice to talk with you again.
It was wonderful talking with you. Yes.
I hope that next time we get together, it'll be even better of a conversation, as it always has been.
Yes.
And we look forward to catching up with you on social media and seeing what you're up to.
I will try really hard to keep that updated.
Thanks for coming in, Vinnie.
Hey, my pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.